Thank you having for having this opportunity to be here. I chose a table between the flowers table and the technology table, so I can work with these two possibilities. I will read my paper as I don't trust exactly in my English. I hope you can follow. I've made some some images here just for us to, but the main things are in what I will read. To start, two preliminary notes on science and ethics. One, I would like to remark that the articulation between so-called ritual religious use of ayahuasca and mediumship is an important feature of the religious groups I am calling daime religions. I mention here so-called ritual religious because the use of ayahuasca by itself certainly involves many other relevant aspects. It involves recreation, involves creativity, involves humor, involves pleasure, even in this religious context. So this articulation is also related to a cosmovision in which reincarnation and karma are important features, and which relates daime religions to Kardechism and theosophy, due to an association of their founders with the so-called esoteric societies and spiritist groups in Brazil. It can be seen as redundant or even naive, but it is relevant to point out that to consider the world composed by different plans and influenced by both corporal and incorporeal beings has important implications, as it legitimizes as existing what is considered by common sense as inexistent, because it is invisible or because it is untouchable. This serious consideration that there are more to explore beyond the visible things actually challenges a poor and mediocre rationality, which simplistically denies the possibility of its existence of what the ego is not capable or does not want to perceive. In general, the things that actually are not of its taste. I know that for many scientists, this is actually a mechanism of... But let me bring us to the early 70s, when Gregory Bateson, in the chapter The Cybernetics of Self, a theory of alcoholism, of his book Steps to an Ecology of Mind. First of all, I would remember that he had a major concern with reflecting and researching, significantly inspired by the idea of research and particularly ethnography. He was an anthropologist, as expressing a relationship, on one hand, and of a more symmetrical science, in which the way research participants think about their experiences will be considered as relevant theories to work with. So it was more plural idea of science. Science in this would not be just what a few scientists make of it. Bateson launched from his work with the controversial Alcoholics Anonymous the idea that their type of therapy is basically an epistemological healing. This implies to think about therapy actually as a way of dislocating and relocating our points of view about our own experience and existence. So nowadays there are researchers who, as I try to do myself, have also a major concern with turning to symmetrical our relationships with other participants of our research projects and take them seriously, as considering as consistent their theories about their own experiences as well the so-called scientific theories may be. Two, I would like to point out that in my over 20 years of studies on the use of psychoactive substances, I learned a lot of my work as an academic and researcher, as well as for my life. So it's at least also inconsistent epistemologically speaking, only consider the aspects, let's say, laboratorial of our findings. I think scientists cannot separate their work from what has happened with their personal lives. So I think even here, there is an idea that science is just one thing, but I can think about science as plural. And so I can include here the knowledge I have seen it's produced by other populations and by epistemological diverse approaches. I know that for many scientists, this is actually a mechanism of self-protection against the prejudices which paradoxically could be found in academic life, conditioned by moralist values of prestige, but also by subservience and searching for financial advantages from the industries, particularly in our case, the pharmaceutical one to get funded. But from my point of view, if we consider only valid in terms of science only the knowledge produced in laboratory or in controlled conditions of temperature and pressure, this is also effectively bad and inconsistent knowledge. I am not remarking anything new, but I can see a great deal of enthusiasm and resources deposited on laboratorial research as the unique way to state that the use of psychedelics is not per se a problematic or harmful, with an agenda of building credibility and to satisfy the media. I think that may be good to have a bit of self-criticism with the enthusiasm as we know from our experience that a ritual or a conversation is not laboratory, and that the people who we work with are not samples, but effectively participants of our research. So let's think and challenge science which treats them as deposits of data and which think they are objects of knowledge. I think they are subjects of knowledge. And I also think that the academy should reflect, for example, what is happening here. A plural and effective demonstration of a genuine and diligent curiosity. From the perspective I am presenting here, the key criterion to establish the validity of the knowledge produced is to present a consistent reflection about the conditions and the implications and the place from where we present our findings. A brief note about the research project which fundamented this paper. My initial idea with the project was to collect data on the knowledge and experience ayahuasca religions participants have developed in dealing with a set of different problems they are demanded to solve, which one may associate with mental health. However, I was not allowed to research all ayahuasca religions in Brazil. So it will be better to consider to change the title of my paper and replace ayahuasca religion with daime religions. Therefore, I went to investigate and explore actually the knowledge daime religions participants have developed and incorporated to ritual religious life on dealing with the, let's say, management of what may be called mental health issues, particularly among ritual participants. I would like to express here my gratitude with all participants of daime religions who have collaborated with my research project for their generosity, their time, their interest, but mainly for their consistent and genuine interest on the knowledge academic and ethnographic research can provide. This is actually what constructs a better horizon for us, for all of us. So in Rio Branco, a city of Brazil, when visiting Barquinha, which is one of the daime religions, I was introduced to two mediums, Rita and Luiz, members of Centro Espírita e Obras de Caridade Príncipe Espadarte. Oh, what's happening here? So, Just to give a very initial idea, the denomination Barquinha was inspired by a tradition established in the 1940s by Daniel Pereira de Matos. He is introduced by Barquinha participants as an extraordinary man. He was a shipbuilder, a cook, a musician, a barber, a tailor, a carpenter, a joiner, a craftsman, a poet, a mason, a shoemaker, and a baker. But more relevant here, Pereira de Matos used to be a sailorman in the past, in Maranhão, a state from the northeast of Brazil. And he went to Acre, in the Amazonia, in the first part of the 20th century. There was initiated there to daime use. Barquinha is one of the religious networks which derived from the initiative of Daniel Pereira de Matos. From his inspiration, at least 5 different centers of spiritual work were founded, all organized from the idea that daime takes us to go to a sacred sea, where we can meet enchanting beings who may conduct us in our navigation. So let's talk about the work of Von Agir. Now you approach the event I mentioned in the beginning. It was organized by 2 mediums, Rita and Luis. Just to situate, Rita and Luis are civil servants. Rita was at the time working as emergency staff at a general hospital in Rio Branco, and Luis in a governmental agency for land control and economic development. I interviewed Rita and Luis, and in one of our meetings they invited me to come to a special spiritual work. In this special work, they told me an entity called Von Nadir, Granny Nadir, a preta velha, a black grandma woman, that is an entity, came from the spiritual plane to help young people, participants of the community of Barquinha. Very briefly, Barquinha rituals are structured to have weekly, in general, on Saturdays, another special ritual called Obras de Caridade, charity works, when spiritual entities incorporate and develop mediums to attend people in need. People have to leave the space of the main ceremonial activities to consult the entities. They told me about a situation which was relevant to understand in which context they decided to go into set up that special spiritual work. Rita told me he was perceiving that his daughter was not having good experiences with using her mobile phone. So he decided to apprehend the mobile phone. He was her father. But one day, Von Agir was incorporated in the Obras de Caridade, and a young member of the community, Rita's daughter, reference to the entity, consulting her about a problem she was confronting, complain about his father. He was the medium itself. Who had confiscated her cell phone because he thought she was experiencing situations that did not approve. Von Agir, according to Rita, pledged to resolve the situation, but rather demanded that the girl would commit to not be engaged in problems that his father thought she was getting involved. Rita's doctor then agreed. I will not go in many detail because just to close, they had no problems at all. That situation triggered an idea about give the same opportunity of having Von Agir help for other young participants, mainly those who would confront conflictive situations like that one. So the idea was to open a different ritual space to help those Barquinha participants. So the interesting unfolding of this experience made Rita and Luis consolidate their idea about to organize the work in Mutum, the place where they work with Von Agir. So we went to Mutum. We arrived at Mutum in the outskirts of the city of Rio Branco. Early evening. About 20 young people were there besides me, Rita, and Luis. I wondered what one can do to have 20 young people from probably 15 years old to early 20s there on a Friday evening in a remote and not very comfortable place to take ayahuasca, which has, as perhaps you already know, a bitter and most of times unpleasant taste and difficult experiences. So we arranged the place outside. People put on white clothes and waited. We drank diamond and sat down, and a few of the participants lay down in the hammocks they brought. Rita started to concentrate himself in a remote place, and we started to pray. Then following this moment, a voice that reminded me a grandmother turned and sounded loudly in the silent forest. Vonagir had just arrived from the spiritual plane and was incorporated with Rita. Vonagir arrived singing her ponto, or a chant which identifies herself and tells a little bit about who she is. I am waiting. I have to say that I have filmed this ritual, but I had asked permission for the mediums to show to us, to bring here. But actually, a couple of months ago, I realized that I had to have the permission of the entity, of Vonadir. So I went to the mediums to ask, but since then, they could not incorporate Vonadir. So unfortunately, I cannot bring the film here because I don't have her permission. But I hope next breaking convention I can. Rita and now Vonadir put a skirt and then a stole around her neck. Now it is not the tall man who is there, but a loving granny. She